Hi everyone. Okay, today we're going to be talking about rabies blood tests in pets for traveling. So apologies, it's been a long time since we did a an update for YouTube. But anyway, here we go. So rabies blood tests. Um, okay, well first of all, what's the purpose of the blood test, and why is it necessary? So rabies is a transmittable disease. If people get bitten by dogs and the dog has rabies, then people can get rabies from dogs. And so this is happening in India. This is happening in Africa. This is happening in different parts of the world. And so there's certain countries which have managed to ensure that they're rabies free, such as the UK, such as Australia, such as New Zealand, Taiwan. There's some different countries which are rabies free, and then those countries have set strict rules around what animals they allow in, to ensure that they can protect and maintain this rabies-free status. Because, uh, for example, Hong Kong is not rabies. Well, actually, it is rabies-free, but it's the way it maintains its kind of a rabies-free status, or controlled rabies status, is by having all of the pets here vaccinated against all of the dogs here vaccinated against rabies, and then having to have a microchip and a dog license, which means that there's a formal government control system ensuring that if there was an outbreak, like if there was a pet with rabies, there wouldn't be a problem because every dog is vaccinated against rabies, and so you can't have an outbreak. And so there's countries like this where the rabies is very well controlled. Um, it's hard for us to be entirely rabies free because we're next to, we're part of China, and we're on the border with mainland China, where there's it's a little bit difficult with such a large landmass to 100% control a place being free of rabies, because things can spread. However, for example, Australia, New Zealand, um, even Singapore, these places are like islands, and so they and the UK, they've managed to make sure that they're free of rabies, and then actually they don't even need to you don't even need to have rabies to have your pet there. Um, the 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 beauty of that is if you live there, you don't need to have a rabies vaccine for your pet. Just one less injection for your animal. Um, um, the risk is because the pets are not vaccinated. If there was an animal which came in with rabies, then it can spread through the pet population. Okay, so what are the different rules and regulations on rabies? Um, so it depends on the different countries. Let me explain in more detail. Okay, so for rabies, how is this controlled? It's controlled through vaccinations, and it's controlled through blood tests. So to travel to many of these different countries in the world, you need to have a rabies vaccine. It's not the case for every country, but it's the case for most places. So you need to have a rabies vaccine, unless you're coming from somewhere where there isn't any rabies. Um, Also, you need to have a rabies blood test to come into kind of rabies free places, from places where there could be some rabies. Now, blood is taken from the pet, sent to a specific laboratory. There's a list of different accredited laboratories which can do the testing, worldwide. Then, um, then your pet can travel. But how long can it travel after the rabies blood test? Can it travel immediately, or does it have to wait for a period of time? This is often a question which people ask. Okay, so to travel to Singapore, or to travel to Indonesia, or to travel to Hawaii, you don't need to wait. After you have the past rabies blood test, which is done in a as long as it's been done in the right, everything, all the steps have been followed correctly, you can travel immediately. Um, Bear in mind, for Hawaii, you need to use specific US labs. You can't just use, so they have a different reference laboratories which they accept compared to everywhere else in the world. Okay. Um, Now, and also bear in mind that as the time of making this, early in 2024, actually, for example, to go to Indonesia, you can't go to Indonesia with pets from China or from Hong Kong. So the situation's dynamic and changes frequently. But anyway, Singapore, Hawaii, and Indonesia, you can travel immediately after rabies blood test is done. Then there's a couple of countries where you can travel after the blood test has been drawn 3 months before. Now those are New Zealand and also Taiwan. So you can travel there after the blood test has been done 3 months 3 months prior. Please, of course, check with your local veterinarian or check with your pet travels associate who's helping you as to the exact details of where you're traveling from and to, because there can be some variation. But I'm explaining a situation of what's normal in this part of the world. Okay. However, there are some countries where you actually need to wait longer than that. So to travel to Japan or to travel to Australia, actually you need to wait for 6 months after you've done a rabies blood test. So the reason why some of these countries have this extended waiting period is because the rabies blood test is checking the pet doesn't have rabies, and then they want this period of time for it to be established that the pet was in this country, not in their country, not in Australia, not in Japan, but it's in your country, and there's time for if the pet caught rabies or the rabies was developing in the body, it would have all have come out before the chance of travel. So yes, so Japan and Australia, the blood test has to be done 6 months before. So this means for these countries, it's quite challenging and frustrating because there's such a long period of time for the planning process. Japan is quite complicated because you need to have 2 rabies vaccines before doing a blood test. They won't permit just one rabies vaccine, although actually it is permitted to do the second vaccine on the day of having the blood test. For Australia, it's even more complicated. The rules nowadays are there needs to be a verification process done that it's actually the correct pet before the blood test is taken. So, for example, in Hong Kong, you need to have an ISO microchip, and then you need to go to the government offices and have the pet inspected, and there's a verification process to check the ISO microchip is intact for that pet. Before then, you can do the rabies blood test. There are some countries where this is, actually this varies with every country, the real detail of it. For example, to go from Singapore to Australia, they're both rabies free. You don't need to do the rabies blood test, but you still need to have this chip verification process, and you still need to wait for the 180-day period. So I hope that answers the basic questions of why people need to do a rabies blood test for the pet, and then whether or not it's possible to travel immediately after doing that rabies blood test. Thank you, Dan. Have a great day and safe travels.